In the beginning, this appeared to be a tragedy. A 48-year-old mother dying unexpectedly after a loving night with her husband. A 911 call, a seizure turned to cardiac arrest, CPR, her husband, a firefighter, performing resuscitation efforts. A hero turned grieving widower. And for a moment, just like the first responders, you may have thought that's all there was. But this is not a case decided on first impressions. This is a case decided on evidence. And when you look closely, when you look beneath the surface, the story the defendant told falls apart. It falls apart for a number of reasons. But it's proven blatantly untrue based on Marcy's body and his body. Now, the first thing that I want to address is the autopsy. What does her body tell us? Her body is going to tell us what happened to her. So you'll recall the testimony of Dr. Burns and the injuries that she detailed. It was pretty extensive testimony. But she detailed that there was hemorrhaging to both carotid sheaths, just below the jaw, that there was a hemorrhage to the esophagus on one side, that there was a large contusion to the back of her head, starting here at the bony prominence and extending about 6 centimeters down, and that she had bilateral bruising behind the ears. And behind one of the ears, there was something that appeared kind of like an abrasion. So you'll recall that she testified that the bilateral bruising behind the ears can occur two ways, right? So it can occur either as an internal injury by the compression of the jugular, so the congestion caused by the compression of the jugular, causing the hemorrhaging behind the ears. Or it can be from external trauma, or it can be from both. These are not injuries caused by CPR. These are not injuries caused by a seizure. These are not injuries caused by the eye gel or the bag valve mask, and they are certainly not injuries caused by massage. They are exactly what you see when force is applied to the sides of the neck. When blood flow to the brain is deliberately cut off by the compression of the carotids. The medical evidence tells you how Marcy died, which was a vascular strangulation. But what happened before and after is important. That tells us why. It's the motive, right? So people act for reasons. Now, we don't need to prove motive to prove a crime. You're not going to see that in the elements. But in this case, the motive is glaringly apparent. The defendant's marriage was deteriorating. And he was blaming Marcy for the deterioration of his marriage, just as he did in court. The defendant was deeply involved in an affair. To call it an affair is a little bit of an understatement. This was an obsession. He was meeting her family. He was introducing her to his family. They were making plans for the future. They were discussing marriage. They were discussing buying property together in Goldendale. They were talking about their new life together. He was telling his friends about trips that he planned to take with her. He had retained an attorney. You see that in the text messages. And he had planned to move out. But divorce meant financial consequences. Because you'll recall the testimony from Casey Jones and Katie Linton, where they went through the worksheet, right? That was with Casey Jones. And they plugged in his salary and Marcy's salary and the number of years that they've been married. And he determined that he was going to have to pay alimony indefinitely. And he changed his clothes and left work early. He was so upset. And Katie Linton tells you that she was asking him about the divorce. And he said, "I can't, I'm stuck." His financial situation hasn't changed. In fact, It's arguably getting worse, as you see in the text messages. Now, the timeline in this particular case matters. It tells us the how. So, in this case, starts a number of quite a while earlier. It starts actually in July when he meets up with Cynthia for the first time. After they rekindle their relationship. But for purposes of this timeline, we're going to start on December 13th. So we're talking about 3 weeks prior to Marcy's death. December 13th, they have a pretty big fight. We read most of it to you. You'll have the text messages that you'll be able to review during deliberations. But Marcy's telling Kevin, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm really tired of being berated. You have stated your feelings and I hear you. You haven't said one nice thing. Give me 2 weeks to find somewhere to go. The next day, December 14th, Marcy has a safari search for apartments for rent in Washington. She knows the marriage is on the way out. Presumably around Christmas, he's writing these Christmas cards that you have. Detective Arvizo already read them to you, but just highlight one little portion for you here. From the Christmas tree, to the food we prepare, to the home we make, to the decorations we display, our love will be present everywhere. Next year, 2024, will be our year. We will be together celebrating every day with love and understanding of what it means for you and I to be together. Our story will ring in the new year, loud for all to hear. I love you, Cynthia. Love forever and always, Kevin. 2024 was going to be their year. That was when it was all happening. And this is how we know there was an actual plan, right? You'll recall in the interview that Mr. West had with law enforcement, they asked him, was there a plan to leave? And he says no. That was false. There was a plan, he had retained an attorney, and he had told multiple people when exactly he was moving out. All right, so exhibits 181 and 173 are text messages that you'll have. So on January 3rd of 2024, so we're talking 5 days prior to Marcy's death at this point, the defendant texts Walter Ward, who is Cynthia's mother, that he will be moving out on the 8th and seeing an attorney on the 9th. He's also texting with Paul Person, who is Cynthia's brother-in-law, the same day. And he says, I'm moving out on Monday, which was January 8th. You'll have a calendar to double check. And papers are done on Tuesday, January 9th. I know where I sit. So now we jump to the night prior to Marcy's death, January 7th of 2023, or 2024 at this point. And on this day where he's having this amazing night with Marcy and they're making love, he's texting his mistress's mother. Just felt the need to send you a message. Today has been a tough day. I keep thinking about how happy I was yesterday and how we laughed. I want you to know how spiritually connected Cynthia and I are. We have something so incredibly special. Yesterday, talking with you, her and I together felt so great. I can't explain the familiarity and love I have for both of you. You are my family, and I feel like we always have been. Thank you for your love and support. I will never be able to express how much that means to me. I love Cynthia to tears, and I will always give her my all. Love you, Mom. He later asks her, please know how strong we are and that nothing will come between us. I love you so much. And then again later, I'm leaning on you today because I feel so close to you. Cynthia has shared your struggles through life, and I know how strong you are. I don't want to worry my mom when I need you. I miss Cynthia so much, even though we are so close to being together. Today is hard because I miss her so much. I absolutely ache for her, wishing tomorrow would come. I'm so sorry for leaning on you, but you are someone I so trust and love. And then again later, he texts, again Cynthia's mother, says, I will never let go. This is what he's doing right before he makes love to his wife. So then we have an account from him that she vomits, right? Different times in different interviews, it changes here in testimony. Somewhere between 9:30 and 11 is kind of where we're at. Now, today, he tells you that she vomited, but he went back downstairs and was scrolling on his phone. Why is he changing that? Well, he told you, because the Apple Health data came to light. So now he's got to account for why his phone's moving around a lot. Because it was inconsistent with his story that he told to law enforcement. The Apple Health data didn't match up. So now he's got to tweak it a little bit. So let's look at the Apple Health data, because it's crucial in this case. All right. At 12:09 a.m., after in every interview he said that both of them were asleep, right? Up until today. 12:09 a.m., Kevin's phone logs 55 steps. At 12:10, Marcy's phone logs 86 steps, so they're up together. At 12:20, there's a Safari search on Marcy's phone for mother of the bride dresses. That's the last we hear from Marcy's phone before her time. At 1:09, there's a Google search on Kevin's phone for the hotel ledger. And then there's a break in activity where the phone's not moving around. Now, does that mean that they're sedentary? No. It just means that they're not holding the phone, right? Because this isn't a wearable device. They have to actually be carrying the phone around. So there's a break here. We don't know what's happening. It's possible that's when Marcy is killed. 2:11 a.m., his phone logs 143 steps and 2 floors. 2:22 a.m., his phone logs 164 steps and 1 floor. 2:38 a.m., his phone logs 119 steps. 2:48 a.m., his phone logs 128 steps. 3 a.m., his phone logs 457 steps. 3:10, 133 steps. 4:21, 198 steps. And then at 4:27 is when the 911 call starts. There's no steps at 4:27. The steps occurred 6 minutes prior. Now recall from his testimony, he said that he saw her seizing. Right, the phone was plugged in, wasn't moving. He sees her seizing, the dog is whimpering. He runs around to her side of the bed, gently lowers her to the floor. We saw the demonstration. And then has to go back to his side of the bed to get the phone from the charger and come back over to Marcy to render aid. It doesn't match. At 4:27, the 911 call starts. 1 minute and 50 seconds in, he's saying she's still seizing. 2 minutes 34 seconds in, he says she's not breathing. 3 minutes 9 seconds in, she stops seizing. 3 minutes and 22 seconds in, the 911 dispatcher tells him to start CPR. 7 minutes and 20 seconds in, he says he has to go unlock the door. And then 9 minutes, 30 seconds in, you hear the paramedics and the fire arriving. And then the call ends at 4:37 a.m. At 4:39, his phone logs 8 steps. So, unfortunately, this is really what we can know about what was happening. Because we have no report from Marcy, right? We can't ask her what happened. But the phone told a story. And it was inconsistent with what he had told law enforcement. So we had to change it. All right. After the 8th, after her death, we have at 8 a.m., he starts telling his friend Kevin Belines, one of his best friends, when they're alone, because he acts very different when he has an audience, right? Just like up there, just like in here. But when he's one-on-one with those that are closest to him, his true colors come out. And he tells his best friend, Kevin Belines, I feel bad for not feeling bad. This is approximately 3 hours after his wife was declared deceased. Now during the day, that same day, he asked Mark Woodland about getting rid of Marcy's things, and he makes the unsolicited comment about how autopsies often come back inconclusive. It wasn't weeks later, as he made it seem during testimony. It was the same day. And again, later that same day, he tells his other best friend, Scott Slocum, that he feels relieved, like a burden has been lifted. Now, during testimony here today, he tells you, I didn't mean about Marcy. Right? I was just talking about the fire department. They were alleviating so many of my concerns. Scott was pretty clear what he was talking about. And he told you. And then at 5:22 p.m. on the day of Marcy's death, he texts with Cynthia's mother. Cynthia told me you're aware of Marcy's death this morning and how hard it's hit my kids. I want you to know that I'm okay, and I have my mom here and soon my dad. My daughter has her friends over and I hear laughter. Ted is sucked up tight to my mom, and I was talking with Cynthia. Thank you for your prayers and thank you for your love. Heart emoji, I love you, Mom. And then at 6 p.m. he texts her, I don't need more time because your text messages warm my heart. On the 11th, and again, we don't know what he's actually texting with Cynthia because they're using WhatsApp and it's an end-to-end encryption, so we can't access those. But he's telling her mom quite a bit, right? So we can see a lot of what their communication is between he and Cynthia through these texts with his mom, with her mom. So on the 11th, 3 days after, let's go back. The 9th. So this is the day after Marcy's death. He texts with Cynthia's mother again at 9:16 a.m. We had a good night last night and had some good laughs. Spelling errors from the text. So, then at 2:20 p.m., he texts her again, thinking about you and want you to know how incredibly close I feel to you. Thank you for accepting me into your life and supporting Cynthia and I right from the start. I'm so deeply in love with her and will always give her my best. She will always feel loved and feel safe and secure. I'm so grateful to be part of your family. Heart emoji, I love you. Heart emoji again. 2 days later, he texts her again. Cynthia has been such a huge support to me. I know it's hard for her, so hard for her not being able to be here and doing more. I want you to know that she is filling me up with so much love and I would never be able to get through this without her. And then he later tells her that he's taking his sister down to see Cynthia so they can finally meet. On the 19th, he texts Cynthia's mother again. Just want to say hi, heart emoji, I love you, so in love with your daughter, heart emoji. Just want you to know we're better than okay, heart emoji, we're great. And then the 20th is the birthday party / gathering, depending on who you ask, for Kevin at his house when Cynthia comes over and is introduced to the kids as Kevin's sister's friend. His plan to replace Marcy with Cynthia without the financial ruin has been successful. But how he's behaving in the aftermath of Marcy's death is important. These are not the actions of a grieving husband. Again, we've already gone through the comments that he made to his friends. Casey Jones also came over that same day. He was showing her the deer butt bottle opener in his garage. She said he was fake crying. And asked how she knew. Well, she'd seen him real cry. There was no tears. Weren't many tears here today either. He literally erases Marcy from his life almost immediately. He removes pictures of her from the walls and hides them. He gets rid of their bedroom furniture. He gets rid of her personal belongings. He deletes her contact from his phone, unless he never had it saved in the first place. He brings his mistress into the home he shared with Marcy 12 days and introduces her to the children. He deletes incriminating messages from his phone after he has contact with police. There's a number of messages, and you'll have all the text messages. You'll be able to review them during your deliberations. And in those text messages, you can see the dates that they're deleted. A number of them were deleted January 26th. So those weren't deleted to hide them from Marcy. Who was he hiding them from? This is not grief. This is a man who could not be more ready to move on. And he's deleting the messages because he's worried about getting caught. So I want to discuss the jury instructions with you. The judge just read them. There's a number of them. Lawyers like to define things. So we'll start with witness credibility, which is a big one in this case, right? Because you've heard from a number of witnesses and you've had conflicting accounts, including the defendants, right? So, maybe. Okay. Let's see if I think that's going to work. And you have these instructions, you'll have them with you. This is jury instruction number 1. I believe, yep. Okay, this tells you how to evaluate the credibility of a witness. So, in considering witness testimony, you consider these things: the opportunity of the witness to observe or know the things that he or she testifies about, the ability of the witness to observe accurately, the quality of the witness's memory while testifying, the manner of the witness while testifying, any personal interest that the witness might have in the outcome or issues. This is kind of a big one in this case, because many of the people, the witnesses that defense paraded up here, all family members of the defendant. Right? They don't want to see him convicted. Understand. Any bias or prejudice that the witness may have shown, the reasonableness of the witness's statements in the context of all the other evidence, and any other factors that affect your evaluation or belief of a witness in your evaluation of his or her testimony. And there's a separate instruction also that gives you some additional criteria for expert witnesses. All right. I think this is important. And this is, again, in jury instruction number 1, continuation. You must reach your decision based on the facts proved to you and on the law given, not on sympathy, prejudice, or personal preference. There's a lot of testimony meant to pull at your heartstrings in this case. But that's not what it's about. It's about the objective evidence, the objective facts. And then, reasonable doubt. Talked about this kind of a lot. And you finally get the definition. So, this is jury instruction number 4. A reasonable doubt is one for which a reason exists and may arise from the evidence or lack of evidence. It's such a doubt as would exist in the mind of a reasonable person after fully, fairly, and carefully considering all of the evidence or lack of evidence. If from such consideration you have an abiding belief in the truth of the charge, then you are satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt. We define a lot of things for you. We don't define abiding belief. Submit to you that it is a lasting belief. All right. This is direct versus circumstantial. Talked about this one a little bit in voir dire, about how circumstantial evidence gets a little bit of a bad rap. But this tells you that the law does not distinguish between direct and circumstantial evidence in terms of the weight or value in finding the facts of the case. One is not necessarily more or less valuable than the other. What's the direct evidence in this case, right? So the direct evidence would be the defendant's account. He was the one that perceived it. But this is a perfect example of why that could be flawed and why we need to look at the circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence refers to evidence from which, based on your common sense and experience, not required to check your common sense at the door. In fact, the law tells you to use it. You may reasonably infer something that's at issue in this case. So, there's hemorrhaging on the carotid sheaths. You can reasonably infer that there was some sort of a trauma there, right? If there's hemorrhaging to the esophagus, you can reasonably infer that there was a trauma there. All right, there are 2 counts in this case. And it's going to get a little bit confusing, I think, because there's count 1, which is murder in the first degree with premeditation. And then there's count 2, which is murder in the second degree, which is charged under a different theory. So we have premeditated intent for count 1. And for count 2, it's something called felony murder, right? So the defendant engaged in a particular felony that resulted in the death of a person. And you have to consider them separately. So your decision on one should not affect your decision on the other. So let's look at first at count 1. Count 1 is, the elements for count 1 one, jury instruction number 9. Okay. So to convict the defendant of the crime of murder in the first degree is charged in count 1. Each of the following elements must be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. First, that on or about January 8th, 2024, the defendant acted with the intent to cause the death of Marcella West. 2, that the intent to cause death was premeditated. 3, that Marcella West died as a result of the defendant's actions. And 4, that any of these acts occurred in the state of Washington. Now, this fourth one is just what gives us our jurisdiction, right? So this is what allows us to prosecute this particular crime because it occurred in the state of Washington. You might have wondered why we were always asking, is that in Clark County, Washington? That's why. And there's no dispute to the date, right? Everyone agrees that it's January 8th, 2024. So really the question before you is whether the defendant acted with the intent to cause the death of Marcella West, Marcy, and whether that intent was premeditated. So you then have to look at those 2 definitions. We give them both to you. Ten is intent, which is pretty intuitive, I guess. A person acts with intent or intentionally when acting with the objective or purpose to accomplish a result that constitutes a crime. So were you acting with the purpose to cause her death, basically. Premeditation is a little different. And there's this notion that premeditation needs to involve days of planning, weeks of planning, hours of planning. It doesn't. Jury instruction 11 just means premeditated means thought over beforehand. When a person, after any deliberation, forms an intent to take human life, the killing may follow immediately after the formation of the settled purpose, and it will still be premeditated. Premeditation must involve more than a moment and point of time. The law requires some time, however long or short, in which a design to kill is deliberately formed. So, if you have a crime of passion, right, there's an argument, and you shoot someone, maybe that's a murder too, right? Maybe that's not premeditated because it does not involve more than a moment and point of time. It's an immediate act. Strangulation's different. The testimony of the experts, depending on which one you find more credible. Dr. Burt says you typically go unconscious in 5 to 10 seconds, and then you have to maintain that pressure on the carotid arteries for somewhere in the neighborhood of 3, I can't recall her exact range, but the low end of it was 3, so we'll use that. 3 minutes. Maintaining pressure on an unconscious person's carotid arteries for approximately 3 minutes, 2 minutes and 50 seconds, that's premeditation. You can sit in silence for 2 minutes and 50 seconds. That's a while. That's more than a moment and point of time. But there's other evidence for premeditation, the motive, the multiple acts of violence, right? So she testified that this contusion on the back of the head probably wasn't part of the strangulation event, right? I asked her, could it be from this maneuver? She says, no, not likely. So a blow to the head at some point occurs, and then the strangulation. Now, if after full, fair, and careful consideration, you cannot agree as to whether it was premeditated, then, or can agree on the crime generally, right? Then you go to the potential lesser included. So there's a lesser included of murder in the second degree for count 1. And jury instruction number 12 tells you that murder in the second degree is a lesser included of murder in the first degree. Here's the only difference. It's the premeditation. It's the same otherwise. So, same date, defendant acted with intent to cause the death of Marcy West, that she died as a result, and that it occurred in the state of Washington. All right, so that's count 1. Count 2 is a little bit different. Count 2 is felony murder. You hear about this sometime in like bank robberies or things like that, right? So people go in, they're robbing a bank, one of the participants shoots someone, a security guard, for example, during the execution of the robbery. It's technically murder because they were involved in the commission of a felony at the time. But in this case, this is also felony murder because the underlying felony is the assault in the second degree, which is assault by strangulation. So, let's try to straighten that out a little bit. Okay. It's not working out particularly well, but close enough. All right. So here's the elements, a little bit crooked, for the felony murder count 2, murder in the second degree. Different than the lesser included for count 1, which is also murder in the second degree, which is why this gets a little bit confusing. So for count 2, again, same date, January 8th, 2024, defendant committed assault in the second degree, with the defendant causing the death of Marcy West in the course and in furtherance of such crime, and that she was not a participant in the crime of assault in the second degree. She's not like a co-defendant or something along those lines, and that any of these acts occurred in the state of Washington. So the crux really is, what is assault in the second degree? Pretty straightforward. It's jury instruction 17. Person commits the crime of assault in the second degree when he or she assaults another by strangulation. Okay? He does not have to intend to cause the death for count 2. He only has to intend to assault her by strangulation. So, we then have to define for you what an assault is. It's an intentional touching of another person that's harmful or offensive. It's offensive if the touching would offend an ordinary person who is not unduly sensitive. Certainly, pushing on someone's neck, putting your arms around someone's neck, whatever the mechanism is. Defense is very focused on the vascular strangulation, the chokehold. He likes to call it a rear naked chokehold. The rear vascular restraint hold is one potential mechanism that Dr. Burr said. But she also said that it could be just fingers to the carotids, right? From the front or the back. And if you're putting your thumbs from the front in a person's carotid and hooking your fingers behind the ears, that could cause bruising. And if you're going from the back and putting your fingers into the carotids and putting your thumb behind the ears, that could also cause bruising. And then she testified also if you're in a rear vascular restraint chokehold, the arm and the pressure to the ears could cause the bruising and the abrasion. So there's multiple potential mechanisms. We don't know. We weren't there. Marcy can't tell us. But any one of those would fit the vascular restraint or the vascular strangulation. So then we need to define what strangulation is. And we're starting to lose paper here. Basically just means compressing a person's neck and obstructing their blood flow or ability to breathe. So either it's an anterior compression where you're compressing their breathing, their trachea, or it's a lateral compression where you're compressing the carotids and the jugular. This cuts off your air, this cuts off your blood flow. Both effectuate death. This actually effectuates death a little bit faster and causes unconsciousness much faster. And then there is a special allegation. So if you were to convict either on count 1, the murder in the first degree, or the lesser included of the murder in the second degree, or count 2, the felony murder in the second degree, then you go to the special verdict. And the special verdict is just whether or not they're intimate partners. And so you may have wondered why we were asking, were they legally married? Do they have biological children? Things like that. This is why. It's jury instruction 21. Intimate partner means a spouse or persons who have a child in common. So Marcy and Kevin were legally married. They had children in common. They were technically intimate partners for purposes of the law. In this case, the body tells us what happened. The affair tells us why. And the timeline tells us how. And when you put it all together, there really is only one conclusion that fits with every piece of the evidence, which is Marcy was killed by a vascular strangulation at the hands of the only person that was there, which is her husband. The law requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt, not proof beyond all doubt. The standard has been met in this particular case, and I'm going to have one more opportunity to speak with you because it is my burden, but I thank you for your attention during closing arguments and during this trial.